They met on top of the mountain that divided their two villages. The villages were enemies, so they could not be together. But their love was strong, and they found a way. The two lovers learned earthbending from the badger moles. They became the first earthbenders. They built elaborate tunnels so that they could meet secretly. Anyone who tried to follow them would be lost forever in the labyrinth. But one day, the man didn't come. He died in the war between their two villages. Devastated, the woman unleashed a terrible display of her earthbending power. She could have destroyed them all. But instead, she declared the war over. Both villages helped her build a new city where they would live together in peace. The woman's name was Oma, and the man's name was Shu. The great city was named Omashu as a monument to their love.
Yeah, no, they're just going to be lesbians. Hey everyone, and welcome to another video. So basically today, February 23rd, my sister and I have binged episodes 3, 4, 5, and 6 of the live action Avatar series on Netflix. So I'm reviewing all of them tonight while it's fresh in my head. I had to take notes on my computer for each episode because, again, when you're binging things, they all kind of run together. So I had to get my thoughts organized for each individual episode. So today I'm going to be reviewing episode 4, Into the Dark. So with that in mind, let's get into this one. This one fell flat. I don't hate the series, but I did not like this episode. And so for me, episodes, I'll get on my opinions of 5 and 6. So it's kind of going to depend on the finale, like the final 2 episodes for my overall opinion. I still have an overall good opinion about the show. This was the weak point of the show. This was the weakest episode, and I hated this one the most. So I'm going to be looking at my notes because I got to keep my thoughts straight. So this is where things kind of went wrong for me. And for me, I did like episode 3. As I said, I'll have a card here for my review for it. I just reviewed it. So that was about a 4-star episode for me, and I liked it. I felt like it had pacing issues. They combined too much. I felt like they could have taken Jet and the Freedom Fighters out, put them in another place so they could have proper screen time. However, things that went wrong in this episode, episode 4, made me like episode 3 a little less when you put it together. So basically, let me start off by saying King Boomy did not look as good as I thought he did based on the glimpse I saw of him in the trailer. They chose a young actor and then they just did makeup to make him look older, and it wasn't done very well, but that's forgivable because, you know, he has a young, like, not really young man, but he has more of like a middle-aged man like body, and Boomy has a very powerful athletic body, and so if you get an old man who actually looks like Boomy's age does, then he wouldn't have the athletic toned body that you need. So I understood, and that was forgivable if it was by itself. But King Boomy had other issues, and I'll get to those in just a minute. So the bending in this was really, really good. The fight scenes were really good, and the sets and the costumes design and the acting are all really, really well. I just didn't like Boomy, honestly. And he did Boomy's voice really well. He did Boomy's personality really well, but the writers was the problem. They wrote Boomy. He was a little bit more angry and bitter at Aang, and I did not like how Aang knew and found out that Boomy was Boomy right when he first meets him, because then it made all of Boomy's tests really weird, and it kind of didn't make a whole lot of sense. And in the original one, he goes through these tests, find this king that's just crazy, and the twist at the end, one of the last tests was, what's my name? And he figures out Boomy, based on what he's done, he pieces together that it is Boomy, and it just kind of took that whole thing apart, and I did not like that. So that was a big problem for me. Okay. So here's the part that I hated the most about this episode. And they made the lovers in the cave story, which is the entire back history of Omashu, they made them lesbians. And I actually missed it. We watched the scene and my sister had me pause it as they were explaining the story. And we rewound, like we went back 10 seconds to listen to it again. And that's when I caught it, that when they said Oma died, they said she. And then they said Shu could have attacked and she did this. So it was They tried to slip it in there. So congratulations, Netflix. You've checked your box and you've ruined the entire backstory of Amashu. So wonderful job. I'm so proud of you guys. You're so diverse. Honestly, this frustrates me. And it makes me wonder if it frustrates like actual people who are lesbians or gay people, where it's just a box to be checked. Like, they don't care. They're just checking a diversity box, and it meant nothing. Like, it was just so subtle and tried to slip in there, which doesn't even make sense if you don't see it happening in the rest of the world, like in the world building. But that's a whole nother issue, and I'm glad that they don't, obviously, because I don't want that included. But it, like, I think if I remember in the original story, I don't remember which one, but I think Oma was the girl, Shu was the guy, and they had a forbidden romance. And it was a Romeo and Juliet story because their clans were fighting, and I don't remember the details, but to me it seemed like because they just tried to slip it in, it kind of implied that their romance was more forbidden because they were both women and not because their clans were at war. So congratulations, you just ruined Shu's character. Like, I've always loved the concept of Oma and Shu being two lovers, and I think Shu was the guy. I can't remember in the original, but, I'm just so mad. They did have the hippies that were singing the songs and everything, so they looked fantastic. They sounded fantastic, although the guy, his lip singing was not that great, so a few times you could see he was off, but it was still funny. And here's the rest of the problem. He tells the story of the lovers, and they did a cool little animation thing on the wall like the original does, but again, they were lesbian lovers, so kind of ruined the whole story for me. And then, because Aang was with Bumi, he was not with Katara and Sokka when they went into the cave. And they also didn't include the hippies going in the cave, which is fine. And it was caves inside Omashu trying to get to the prison so they could free Aang, as opposed to trying to get through a cave to get through a pass out in the wilderness, which to me made sense. So then Appa had to go with them in the original, like, he didn't want to go underground and he did. And there was a whole cave in, and like there was a bunch that was missing. But Katara and Aang wasn't there, so it was the first moment that him and Katara had a moment together, and they're supposed to eventually figure out that they have to douse the torches that they were holding, and they get ready to kiss, and the lights, like the sparkly lights come on, and they follow it and find their way out, basically. And then the Badger Moles help Sokka because they got separated, so Aang wasn't there, so him and Katara missed that moment that was a special moment, kind of their first ship moment between them. And here's the thing. I have always shipped Katara and Zuko. I know it's a ship that doesn't exist. Sue me. But even I missed Aang, and I missed that moment with Katara because it's a vital point in their relationship. So I missed a moment. And then they find it, like, the cave immediately lights up with the crystals, so there was really nothing to figure out. Basically, they keep coming to dead ends, and the Badger Moles free them and help them find their way to the palace. And then, Sokka and Katara were having fights, so I did kind of like that they had a nice sibling moment, and it ended up being, like, the love between siblings, but it didn't hit the same because lesbian romance and then no Aang, which I wonder if they did that on purpose because either the pacing, or I wonder if there was a secondary agenda to that where, oh, we did a lesbian romance for the backstory, so we cannot parallel it with a straight romance because that would be bad. It just makes me wonder. So I hated that. The whole Lover's Cave thing, I was trying to enjoy it, and it was a good moment, sibling moment between Katara and Sokka, but I hated it so much, so when we went to that perspective, I was just, like, dreading it. I did not like that Aang knew Bumi from the start. I think I've already talked about this, but it changed the test. It made that whole arc weird. I know he didn't make sense in the original either, but it kind of, like, ended up making sense in the end, like, when you realize why he's testing him, and he was just kind of, like, messing around and having fun with his friend. And in this one, I didn't enjoy it, really, and it made Bumi really bitter toward Aang, and he just comes off as bitter, like this kind of bitter old man instead of this funny old man, this weird, crazy old man, and it just is kind of weird. So I honestly hated so much about this episode 4, that the only thing I really did actually enjoy was Iroh getting captured by Earthbenders. In the original, he was captured by the Rhino mercenary guys, and I didn't mind that it was changed because it made sense and it worked really well. I liked Zuko's rescuing him. I liked the fight scene. I liked the bending. I liked the moment with Iroh and the Earthbender and the story there. I'm not going to spoil that for you guys. And then we also got Iroh flashbacks, which we got a couple of new scenes with Iroh, which was really cool to see. And then in those scenes, they had the song Leaves on the Vine playing in the background, and it made me want to cry. So it was a very beautiful moment. So I loved all of that stuff. Honestly, Iroh and Zuko's side plot in this episode got me through it. So there was a brief moment in the beginning of the episode when Katara and Jet encounter each other. It's kind of a follow-up because they stopped Jet's thing. I'm not going to spoil it. But they never did like a fight scene between them or a confrontation. So they encounter each other briefly, and he felt like she betrayed him as opposed to the other way around. So I didn't really understand. I didn't get the feeling of her betrayal, like, oh, Jet's a bad guy. And it really betrayed her, and it hurt her so deeply in the original. And it felt like she betrayed him by stopping his plan instead of her feeling betrayed that he was bad as opposed to good. So I didn't like that. And then they did fight. But it was very brief. It was like 2 or 3 moves, and it was too brief. And for me, they had a bigger duel between them. And then in the original, the duel not only was bigger, but Aang gets involved. And so him and Aang have this really epic fight that's so cool because it's air versus swords. And I missed that Aang Jet fight. Like, they kind of replaced it with an Aang Zuko fight in the last episode, which I loved. But again, Aang and Sokka don't really know Jet very well in this. And Sokka saved the village in the original, which is not here. Like, in this one, he kind of figures out how to get there to stop Jet's plan in time, but it's not the same thing. And you miss that, and you miss the fight with Aang and Jet. And honestly, they all kind of felt betrayed by him, like Sokka, not really. But there was also this whole aspect with Sokka and Jet in the original, that they go on a mission in the original, and Jet kind of does this bad thing in front of him, and it shocks Sokka, like it has an effect on him, and Katara won't listen to him. And so that whole thing was just completely missing because they just rushed through it, and it was like 2 or 3 moves in a fight scene, some words shared between him and Katara, which were amazing. They did act really well. He's perfect. She's perfect. Like, they're really good. It just, the writing and the pacing was completely messed up for it, and I didn't like it as well. So overall for me, this episode 4, which again, what was it called again? Into the Dark is what this episode was called. It revealed the pacing issues for me. I didn't really see it because I enjoyed last episode so much that by the time we got to this episode 4, this episode revealed the pacing issues and what went wrong. And how they really should have only combined Bumi and Omashu and the Mechanist, and then given Jet and the Freedom Fighters their own time later on, maybe divided it half an episode. They could have, it would have worked out better, and I actually have a better spot later in the other episodes. I think it might be next episode where it would have worked better, so I'll talk about that when we get to it. Be looking out for that. Shame on you, showrunners, for making the lovers lesbians. Shame on you. Overall, 2 stars. I wanted to give this more, but I can't. There was just so much that I hated, and it would have been 1 star because I hated most everything about this episode. But Zuko and Iroh and their arc in this entire episode, their arc was really, really good, and that boosted it up to 2 stars. And the acting and costumes and overall look of everything is still really good. And I also love Jet. I just think he needed more time. Him and the Freedom Fighters as well. So overall, that's my thoughts. What are your thoughts, whether you've seen the original or not? Especially you guys who have not seen the original. Are you hindered and feel like the pacing issues are there, or does it feel natural to you guys? Since you have nothing to compare it to, I'm really intrigued to see what you think. Let me know in the comments below. And in the meantime, if you liked this video, please be sure to give it a like and subscribe for more writing and reading videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And in the meantime, if you liked my review of this episode of Avatar, then stay tuned for my review of the next episode in the series, which will be here. It'll be a preview until the next week comes, but check that out. You don't want to miss it.